Do we have anyone here for public comment? Okay, hearing none. Are there any corrections to the January 23rd, 2023 regular meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 23rd.
I'll second it.
Okay,
I have one recommended change. Under public comment, Joyce Mason, it says her email was written into the record. I believe it was read into the record.
okay.
And I think we should make that change.
All right, Jamie, you got that? Okay, thank you. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any corrections to the January 31st, 2023 special meeting minutes?
I move that the minutes be approved as presented.
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, I move to approve the following refunds and abatements, all for overpayment, and allow them to follow their normal course. Any questions? I don't have it
I don't know
here.
that I had any.
They weren't copied in my packet.
I don't have them in my packet either.
For which?
Refunds and abatements.
Refunds and abatements?
I saw them.
I don't think they're in this package either.
I like your book. Thank you. They gave me a little bit.
Technical issues.
Always. Always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have 7 refunds and abatements, all for overpayment.
I'll move to accept this 7 as distributed.
Any, I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Appointments, Richards, acting building official, appointment ends February 15th. I move to appoint him as our building official to get us out of this spiral of constant renewal of an acting building official. You can only do it for 180 days. I move to approve that. We have a new class of students coming out in May? So, July.
So there's nothing in our packet about this?
It's just-
About the 180 days or?
No, that's state statute. We've gone
Oh,
through
we
this
didn't have
before.
anything in our packet for tonight about this at all?
No.
So-
Well, February 15th is Wednesday.
Yeah, but there's nothing in our packet from last week that was provided about this?
Just saying. February 15th is the date.
That his 180 days are up?
Correct.
So explain to me, what is the statutory piece of it?
The statutory piece is you cannot renew somebody more than for 180 days as your acting building official. We did actively, we reached out to a couple of different candidates. No one met the bill for what we were looking for. At this point, Richard is willing and able to come in and work for us as our building official. The only thing it changes is that, yes, he's our building official, we get out of this 180-day cycle, but we continue to look for somebody to work in his stead going forward.
Did we advertise at all?
We did.
And where did we advertise?
The individual, well, we advertised in the,
OEDM.
thank you.
Excuse-
And we did receive one candidate from Hamden, was not a good fit for the town. So this is where we're at.
And you're asking for this to be a permanent appointment?
Permanent, yes, it's a 4-year position. 4-year position. I've already talked to Carl. He's okay with this.
She didn't provide his resume. We haven't advertised in a place other than the one place that you've noted. We haven't given anybody else in town the opportunity. And no, you may be excellent. This is no critique at all. It's really an administrative issue. We haven't had a chance to.
I've been working this in the background all along. Sorry I didn't give you all this information, but as of Wednesday, Richard no longer, we have no building official. Now keep in mind, Jerry Russ was with us unfortunately for 2 terms when he shouldn't have been, or 3 terms. You can't have an acting building official for longer than 180 days.
But we did that already.
Yeah.
So we do have a record of doing that.
You do.
I guess I'd be more inclined to reappoint him as the interim building official until we can hire a permanent building official.
It is against state statute though.
But we did it once before.
Well, not under my watch.
How is it that we're able to hire a building official that's working as a full-time building official in a neighboring town?
Well, I've already talked to Carl about doing this. He's okay so long as we have a building official who doesn't.
Who's Carl?
Carl is the town manager in Clinton. And he said as long as Richard keeps his job separated, doesn't do any work for the town during the day, he's okay with that.
I'd like to table it for 2 weeks until we have a chance to.
Well,
I
then we're
think it
gonna
needs to
be
be
without
advertised.
any building official, just gonna say.
I don't wanna leave the town hostage here, which is sort of what I feel like's happening. I'd be willing to then reappoint him as an interim building official for 30 days. Let's get this sorted
I'll
out.
second that.
Can I explain it?
Nope.
Let me,
Nope.
yes, I
No,
will
it's
explain it.
Board of Selectmen meeting, it's
All right.
only at the
I will
invitation.
explain
Point
it.
of
You will
order.
listen.
Excuse me, point of order,
Oh my
Nancy.
God, you know what?
Point of
Let me,
order.
No,
let
here's
me-
a point of
let me
order for
explain
you.
it. State statute.
You know
State
what,
statute-
you're not invited to speak at this moment,
State statute
please.
is 180 days.
Oh,
Nancy, you gonna let this go?
We need to move on.
Thank
All right.
you.
We need to vote on it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I also move to appoint Richard Finus, I'm sorry, for the River Cog Regional Housing Committee. Tom Hogarty has stepped down. He doesn't want to do the alternative housing. I didn't have anyone else that was available to do that. And Richard would also like to be able to do that.
When did Tom Hogarty step down?
He sent me an email 2 weeks ago.
So were the town party chairs notified?
Well, this
And
is,
given an
this is a
opportunity.
river cog, this is a regional housing committee piece, this is not something that is typically, it's not something in town.
I think I'd like to take some time to consider that appointment.
Okay, we'll table that for tonight. I'm gonna move on to department reports. Kathy, there you are.
I'm here, I'm hiding. Hi everyone, Kathy Zandy from the Board of Education. So a brief summary of our January activities. First of all, our Haddam Killingworth High School senior Paige Corcoran came and told us about the annual holiday telethon. So for those of you who have not seen this, this is a our high school has a TV show and a, production classes and directing classes, and this is a 4-hour telethon talent show that is completely student designed and run. The students select a charity for all the money to go to, and they open up the phone lines. They have Board of Ed members and other, I'll say, fellow dignitaries answering the phones. I believe in previous years, their highest amount that they've collected is about something on the order of $12,000 or $14,000.
Wow.
This year, not only was it delayed because we had a snow day the last day of school in December, so it was delayed to the first day of school, January 3rd, so they had to just reschedule everybody and everything for that day. The charity that they picked was in support of Rachel Webster, who is the daughter of their music teacher, Marcy Webster. And, excuse me, they raised $28,800, so they essentially doubled. Which is absolutely amazing. And if you've never seen it before, I recommend that you watch it because it's fabulous. You get to see all of our students, the courage they show by getting up on stage and singing and performing, sometimes by themselves, sometimes in groups. It's amazing. So that was our great news for that day. Paige came and told us she was the director of it this year. Let's see what else. So we also January, the next day we had our HS Alumni Day. So students that graduated the previous year come back and talk to the current seniors about what it's like to be in college and that sort of thing. So they had a nice session with some of our recent graduates, which was great. We also, more good news, so Superintendent Wibby provided a review of our annual accountability report. So this is something the Connecticut State Department of Education does. They come and they rank every school at every level on, I believe, there are 12 indicators. Each school gets a category from 1 to 5, 1 being the highest and 5 being the lowest. All of our schools are between 1 and 3. And Burr Elementary and Killingworth Elementary were both named as schools of its distinction this year, which is quite impressive. It's usually not the case that you get 2 schools in the same district. Their performance and achievement was in the top 10% of all schools in Connecticut, which is fantastic. Let's see, budget. Budget is coming. I know we have the Board of Finance here, so this is fantastic. As won't be surprised, we've had an increase in fixed costs, busing contract, diesel fuel, heating oil, insurance, all of that stuff is on our list for the budget discussion. He gave us kind of a preview, but no numbers yet, so that's coming. Also, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance participate in tours of our schools. We're about to kick off a kind of a master capital review of our properties. So we did some tours. The Tecton is a company who's done our assessment to date. Part 2 of their assessment will be a demographic study that's coming. And then part 3 is a master plan for future of the district and all the buildings and campuses we have. So that's coming. We also, a little more boring, is we approved to replace 2 boilers at KES. Okay? And I'll just, again, close, as I always do, with our strategic plan, our core values, our vision of the graduate. All sorts of information can be found on our website, rsd17.org.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Comments?
Looking forward to those budget numbers.
Yeah.
Or not.
I know. As you can imagine, our heating costs and transportation costs are, hit like everybody else has been. So.
Thanks, Kathy. In terms of other department reports, I will say, I know that Richard and Robin have been doing an active review of open building permits. I know this has been an ongoing discussion, not including 2022 and 2023 open building permits because those are more volatile. They have closed 245 building permits. So I think that's very positive news.
Can I ask a question about that?
Mhm.
I did notice that drop, and it was for just 1 year. And is it because that's what we focused on that 1 year?
Correct. We focused on those that we could get as we're going through the and making inspections. We focused on getting those closed
Were
out.
these inspections or were these administrative?
Some of them were
closeouts?
administrative and some of them were inspections to get them closed out as they went through. Any further questions about department reports?
With the health department report as well.
Yep, all of the, yes. Any other questions? From a health department report, I do have to reach out. We had, last week, we started receiving calls about a putrid smell on Parker Hill Extension. And DEEP was notified, and there was some issue. Somebody was spreading manure or nitrates. And now I need to reach out to our health district and have them go out and evaluate to see whether or not there was any impact to residential wells.
Was it
This is
on
Killingworth, right?
farm field?
I'm just saying. You know, after receiving 7 emails, yeah, I'm just saying.
Was it anywhere near where there might have been
Parker
cows?
Hill, North Parker Hill. I can smell it tonight, actually.
So it was significant enough
How
for
was that meant?
several phone calls.
I didn't call.
Just saying.
Yeah. It's, it's springtime.
Yeah. Love is in the air, whatever. All right, budget report. I know Gina sent out the budget report. Did either of you have any questions?
Excellent. I think I'm looking at,
The residential PFAS filtration system with that 3375, where did that number come from? It's off to the side. Is that just money set aside at this point? It's outside of the,
I'm not sure if I remember that
it's
annotation.
highlighted pink on
You're
both
looking at, that's not the current year.
for the next year.
That's next
Yeah,
year's
that's-
budget.
And we're just, that's a holder.
That's a different discussion.
That's Thursdays.
I did not print out, unless Elizabeth did. I sent you the normal monthly email for the,
so any highlights?
other than, snow budget's looking pretty good right about now.
Yeah.
I know.
So I made that statement at the Board of Finance meeting the other night, and I was told that I jinxed everybody,
Yeah,
so
all
now
right,
you're
well,
taking
it'll
the
be your
jinx
fault.
off me, and you're taking it.
Sorry, I'll take a little snow.
All right, new business, joint discussion with the BOF regarding the fiscal priorities for 23-24. Members of the Board of Finance, thank you for being here. I've got 3 items that are a fiscal priority. Number 1, use of our ARPA funds. We definitely need to, all of our ARPA funds need to be obligated or incurred by December 31st of 2024
They need to be obligated, right?
and expended
By
by
26.
26.
Thank you. Yep.
So those are things that we just need to move forward on. Particularly with capital items, we can obligate funds, but oftentimes it's harder to spend those funds by the time frame. So that's certainly one of the things. We're still working with the state to understand what the town impact will be for any continued soil test, or, excuse me, private water supply well testing will be. We don't know what that is yet. It's something that we'll learn more over time, but that's something we need to be concerned about. And then clearly ongoing maintenance of town-owned property. We, not only do we have, you guys missed it about 3 weeks ago, just behind you up there where those ceiling tiles are, we had a complete failure of the roof. So the water is coming into this building. Now, while we need to build we've under consideration for replacing this particular building, it's gonna be a long time coming. It takes a while to get the analysis done, to understand what it is our needs are, to make it fit within our budget. But in the meantime, we're gonna need a new roof. There's gonna be other things that come into play. The barn, I'd love to see the barn at least painted and replace some of the boards on that barn. We don't have to stand it up perfect, but we need to make sure that we at least make it right for now. So those are my priorities. Lou, Jamie?
I think that I would like to just dovetail into those, and I want to make a point that there really is no free lunch when it comes to the maintenance of our town facilities, and we have long avoided doing the ongoing PM so that these projects turn into great big capital projects. And I think what Nancy's talking about is for us to be more willing to step up to some of these near-term, and they may look expensive to us, but they're not expensive in terms of adding 6 and 7 zeros to them because we've got to put a $20,000 roof on. And so those are the kind of things that we need to be focused on. And I think the barn is another great example of those kinds of things. The other thing that I just want to share, and of course, Board of Finance, I'm preaching to the choir because we were all at the same meeting, but for the benefit of the rest of this group, we had I thought, a very productive meeting talking about the approach to the facilities that our emergency responders need, specifically a firehouse. And the common sense approach that they were advocating for, which I'm in complete support of focusing on a plan that looks at the long term, but it focuses on a plan that can be tackled in smaller increments so that we can embrace preparing our town facilities, the school needs, as well as the fire, and work it all within the same budget. So I would like to see more of those types of things happen, because that's within Killingworth's means. Coming forward with $50 million, $100 million, even $10 million projects, probably not within our means. So we've got to be more creative with what we do. And again, I commend the fire commissioners for coming up with that plan.
Jamie?
I just echo what you both said.
So that's our priorities.
Is this a back and forth or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay. I just wondered if you had plans of doing a long-term maintenance planning as you did the multi-year capital plan.
It's something we certainly can consider. Here's the problem. We have these emergencies that pop up. And what we need to figure out is, okay, once we replace this roof, what's the next, how many years out do we put that into the NYCIP? The barn hasn't been on the NYCIP as long as I can remember. We need to put the barn on there because we can't let that barn and the associated birdhouse, I call it the birdhouse because it's that little shed and it's nothing but the barn swallows home. We don't have that on our list of things to maintain. It's never been. It needs to be maintained. It's part of the history of this town. So that's gotta be there.
I think we did, Andy, to answer your question, we started to lay the groundwork for that this year. We just recently initiated a study to look at our town infrastructure, our roads and drainage, and trying to get those mapped out on an annual, ongoing preventative maintenance program. We included some of the municipal facilities. There's not a lot of them, but we did include those. But we were sort of trying to balance the cost of that level of effort, recognizing that roads are our highest priority. And then if there's room to then consider the municipal facilities as well, we will. It may have been in there, but I know we did some value engineering as we issued that contract. But it does have to happen. We need to, and as recent as a few minutes ago, the three of us sat and looked at a piece of software that could potentially help us to track that type of stuff so that we're not having projects pick themselves.
Right.
That we're out ahead of them and that we're doing the proper maintenance on an ongoing
So
basis.
that was my point, maybe they're not capital projects, maybe
They're
they're
maintenance projects.
maintenance
Annual.
projects that go in the regular budget on an annual basis.
Yeah.
Right, how do we make sure that our repair line is sufficiently funded for all the things that need to happen?
Right.
Would you include the library and, the old firehouse on
Yeah.
on the circle?
Absolutely.
I mean, I would think we'd wanna include everything that the town owns.
Right.
Fire department
I think that's
seems
what
to
we
be on top of taking care of their buildings.
I think there were 4 or 5 buildings in there, the ones that you just mentioned, as well as the highway building down below, they were all
That'd
in
be
that,
good.
in that study, but we gotta focus on roads first, and then we'll focus on buildings.
Okay. Can I ask Rob, do you have anything you wanna say? Rob?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Speak up.
Okay, I'm speaking as loud as I can. I don't know if it's coming through or not, but.
It is.
I probably could have been there. This is a public health issue. I figured I'd stay away and not run the risk of, infecting anyone there. But, yeah, everything that's being said sounds good. I do wanna say, from a finance perspective, we always keep our eye on the mill rate as well. Last year, there was a pretty good reduction, which, of the mill rate itself, which mostly was tied to the evaluation, but there was at least a small, tax decrease, in real human terms. Despite that, tax receipts seem to be up this year over this point last year for any number of reasons that Gina could probably speak more eloquently about, or Michelle could speak more eloquently about than I could. And I just want to make a comment as well. I see that the governor's proposed budget is out. Who knows what will really happen? But the governor's proposal is for the town of Killingworth to receive about $45,000 more in total aid than we did receive previously, which is dramatic in and of itself. Marcel will remember it, and Lou, of course, and Nancy. Not that long ago, we would get a governor's budget, and it would show these dramatic reductions, and we would all panic. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? So the idea that we are expecting, from the governor's perspective, at least a small increase in revenue to the town is good news, but we'll see what happens. And I hear the conversation about increased costs for various things, and we'll see how that comes down when we get the various reports, particularly with fuel. Those prices seem to me to have moderated to some degree. I'm sure if I look back, they're more expensive than they were a year ago, but they have moderated from a high point they were at not too long ago. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't know if it can be resolved tonight. I am curious about the use of the ARPA funds. I know it's something, I want to say it's like $1.7 million of unallocated funds, something like that. Anyone who's hearing me can correct me if I'm mistaken about that. I'm still at this late date, I'm not 100% sure what we can and can't use those funds for, but to the extent that we can use them for some of the capital projects that are being considered and or some of the maintenance projects that have been discussed here recently, I would be in favor of that. And to the extent we can't, hopefully we can use them for eligible purposes that would allow us to devote other funds to those projects, so that hopefully we'll land on our feet for another budget year, but we shall see.
All right, thanks, Rob. Anyone else from the Board of Finance?
Here's,
Okay.
there's 3 of those for you.
Okay. Any other discussions from Board of Finance?
Thank you, Melissa.
All right, thank you guys for coming.
Can I make a motion to add an E to new business? Another topic to new business?
No? Okay.
Yeah, hey, it's Rob again. I'm sorry, before we 100% leave, our joint meeting here, our joint discussion, I won't hold you to it, but what does the Board of Selectmen, identify as their time frame? When do you, right or wrong, expect you may, give your materials to us?
I'd like to say mid-March.
Okay, great, thank you.
Isn't that generally the around
The
the
timeframe?
timeframe?
It's usually come their first regular meeting in March.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have until then.
It's in the charter, so.
Yeah.
It's spelled out.
And we have our first budget meeting Thursday, I believe, we're planning on. Because you can't make Wednesday, correct?
Thursday,
Thursday, you can't make Thursday, you can make Wednesday.
Okay. Thursday maybe by one.
Rob kind of alluded to the question, but didn't ask it, but do we have a good sense of what we can use the ARPA money for?
We elected, we're a non-entitlement unit, and we made an election to take the standard allowance, we're under 10 million. General government services, we can use it for. You can't use it to offset
Okay.
Debt or pay into a pension plan, but other than that.
Good to hear.
So even some of these software ideas that we have
Mm.
could potentially be funded through these ARPA funds. Could we get online permitting software? Could we get budget software? Could we get,
I would be careful with that a little bit, Nancy.
you can't do
because-
the maintenance.
Because you're incurring
increasing
future
expenses.
recurring
You can only do
expenses.
the
Yeah.
one time.
Right.
You can only do the one-time fees to get this stood up.
Like the implementation cost.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
But not
the-
the ongoing leasing.
Correct, so the implementation costs, like even for this
But I think,
GIS software.
but I thought the language said, recommended against funding things that would have follow-on recurring expenses.
There was some of
And I
that.
think that's because they wanna make sure that municipalities go into these things with their eyes wide open, that
Don't
we
just-
don't, we'll buy
just
something and then all of a
up your
sudden, now we've
government.
saddled
Yeah.
ourselves with this recurring expense.
Recurring debt,
Yeah.
correct.
So for instance,
Hey, it's,
topic that's
Rob
probably,
again.
Go ahead, Rob.
Is there an understanding that if we so chose, we could use it for highway maintenance?
We could,
and I was gonna ask a field, a ball field, or a multi-purpose field, or a baseball field.
Well, I mean,
Whatever
we've
we
got,
decide.
we've already got grant funding for that.
Well, yeah, that's half. So there's 250,000 that, if we do it, is coming out of the town, right? Town coffers. So, that's a, it's COVID friendly, it's outside activity, and, that was the genesis of all this ARPA money, wasn't it?
Well, and we've also got some hurdles ahead with remediation of PFAS. But we don't know what the journey's gonna be with this right now. We don't know what the state is gonna say we can and cannot do. And considering the fact that we have to incur it by next year
Mm.
and have it expended by 2 years later, that's a tough call.
Is there a plan to ensure that what we allocate those funds for as a town, that they will be spent by the 2026? Things have been allocated before that have not been spent or addressed for years.
I know, we have this issue. When we go into capital funding, there are times, and you all know it on Board of Finance, I was on Board of Finance too. These expenses go on year and don't get completed. So the key here is that for any of these expenses that we allocate to ARPA funds, they have to have a commitment to get this spent. We have $200,000 for this building that has to get allocated through ARPA funds by 2026 to figure out what we're gonna do with this building.
Has there been any action on that? That was approved by the town
Yeah,
months ago.
there's been no action, other than we've been putting our fingers in the hole in the dam.
They did the siding,
We did the siding, but that was different. But we do need to move forward on that 200, you're right. That
But does the
two,
Board of Selectmen have a plan to move forward?
we do not have a plan right now. We do not, you're right. And it's something that I'm glad you reminded us. We really need to move forward on some sort of a plan to get this done. So we know where we're going.
Use it or lose it.
Is it fair to say that, as a general matter, an operating budget expense would not be an appropriate ARPA expenditure, meaning that we would be probably limited to the capital budget?
Rob, I don't think it's exclusive to capital, but we need to make sure that it's something that we're not funding this year, that then we have a funding shortfall in the following year, and so expense budgets tend to lend themselves to that unless it's a one-time expense. Does that make sense?
I'm sure, I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm just trying to get my mind.
Okay. Thought you disconnected on us. Thought it was something I said.
Yeah, we don't want a cliff. We don't want a cliff into next year. So we don't want to pay for an expense this year that's gonna cause us to have a cliff the following year.
Yeah, you know, I have a little bit of a different view on that, and when we talk about these cliffs and terrible things that are gonna happen in the future, and I've only, been in this for a few years, but there were always these terrible things that were gonna happen in the future. We've gotta raise the mill rate to get ready, and we've gotta do this because something bad's gonna happen, and then, bad stuff did happen. Different sort of bad things happened, than anyone ever anticipated, but, from my perspective, look, we got a plan, we gotta look 10 years in the future. I get all that, but, we also, by the nature of what we're doing, we kind of take these budgets a year at a time too.
Well, that's how they come in, unfortunately. Anything else? All right, I'm gonna move on, and you want a motion to add E?
To the agenda, regarding the Commission on Aging.
I'll second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, I'm gonna move on to B, Journey Home Recovery Living. I want to introduce, Mike, what's your last name?
Drowitz,
Drewitz,
Michael Drowitz,
Big Mike.
and my wife Ann.
So these fine people, they run 2 recovery homes here in Killingworth. I want you to listen to what they do. You all know we have opioid money, and we also don't have an active Youth and Family Services Coalition service at this time. But I want to hear what these folks do, and I want to get the money in the hands of the people that can use it right now. So, Mike, and
I'm gonna pass it off to my wife Ann.
So, just a quick, I won't take a lot of time. So my name is Dr. Hannah Jerwitz. I have a doctorate in psychology and I have a private practice in Branford. Been doing this a very long time. Back in 2015, my husband and I opened sober living homes, and because of my background in administration and programming, transparency, quality of care, safety are paramount to us. All of our homes are very consistent and stable, and we are policy driven, grievance oriented, and very much community driven. One of our priorities is to have community partnerships. We have some with local fitness centers, yoga, and we've just developed one with High Hopes, if you know that in Old Lyme. And what we do is we offer multiple pathways to recovery, and so what we use is whatever works, and so we have these programs that are followed by meditation recovery meetings and discussions in hopes to engage and educate. We also help to start some local young persons, 12-step programs, that we then transfer over to them. One of the cool things about these partnerships is that what we do is train and educate so that we can pass the baton, and that the community and the tribe all own stakeholdership and they take it on for themselves. That's really the key here, is developing the tribe and the community to have some skin in the game. And so that's what we're offering, is our expertise in understanding how complicated this conversation is going to be, how sensitive it is, and how to work with parents, communities, stakeholders to figure out what's going to work for you guys, ultimately being able to pass on what we do to the local youth and family. And if you need some help in doing that, it's one of the things I do best, is consult and help organizations build and develop that leadership, and then be able to transfer that leadership over when it's ready and healthy and everyone agrees that they're off and running. So we clearly have a stake in the game. In full transparency, I'm 32 years in recovery myself, so I understand both personally and professionally. I'm also a happy member of Al-Anon. I grew up around it, so I get it. And so it really matters to us what happens. We care very deeply about Killingworth, and if you guys are struggling, this is what we do. This is what we're meant to do. This is our passion. It's our life. It's what we do. So we're here to help. Obviously, this is not the forum to have some of those sort of more intimate discussions about the nature of your need, what you're looking for, but we're very happy to engage with that.
I have one question. What does grievance oriented mean? I've not heard that phrase.
Oh, it's a way of saying the end user has rights as well as the people delivering the service. So listen, yeah, I want you to talk to me. I want you to tell me what's going on. We have a hierarchy. Obviously try to, if Annie and I are living together, I would encourage us to work it out, but if not, she can go to the house manager. And if not, then come to me. But we also encourage all kinds of communication, problem solving, working things out. So it's the point is to be very sort of clear, ethical, transparent in the way that we communicate, and make sure that we resolve whatever conflicts are going on. You can imagine that in recovery, between the trauma and everything else, there's a lot of conflict. And that would be the other important thing, is to be extremely trauma informed.
And I would move to support the Journey Home Recovery with a $10,000 donation from our opioid settlement.
And is that to work with, can we do a second for discussion? Is that to be used to work with Youth and Family Services as well?
Well, Youth and Family Services, we don't right now, we don't have a coalition. They're still rebuilding. And I heard what Lou said. We have this money. I want to get it out to the people that help. That was my key.
Is this open for?
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask the question, I wasn't quite sure what was happening here, whether there was an ask here. What I hear is we're gonna fund something, but I'm not quite sure
What it is we're gonna fund.
what we're getting in return for the town. I do wanna say, and I'm gonna try and do this without getting upset, but I'm already gonna get upset. I went through a very difficult situation a year ago, almost to the day. And had it not been for groups like this, I don't know how my wife and I and my family would have got through it. So I'm completely behind what you're doing. I just would like to have a better idea of knowing that it's gonna get to the people of the town of Killingworth and the people who need it, but specifically the people of the town of Killingworth. So thank you for doing what you do. It's important.
Thank you. I know this may be on record the first time you've ever heard this. At this point, I would prefer not to be allocated any money. That's what I said. But at this point, what I'd prefer to do is to sit down with the key stakeholders of Killingworth, and get a better understanding of what it is that you need, that you expect, that you're looking for.
I love it.
What I have may we may be challenging you a little bit to kind of check yourselves, to be a little courageous in some of the efforts that we think are needed. And so, listen, I may come back and ask you for all of that 21,006 whatever. However, I want to make sure that we have not only a plan, but outcomes, milestones in a way, more importantly, of measuring if you're getting what you need here. So part of that is just really sitting down and talking about how we're gonna measure it, and then being able to report back.
It's perfect. We're
I'm
gonna
in.
table this. We're
Come up with
totally
a
in.
plan.
I'm glad I found you,
Yeah.
because this
And we've
is,
been here.
I know you've
Been here
been
for a few
here,
years.
and
You know, when
That was our plan, is to
It was-
keep it nice and quiet.
Yeah, well, that's
We're trying to be good neighbors.
We really wanted to be quiet, and the other thing is, we're a nonprofit, and we do a lot of people that can't afford to come in. We help them. The food pantry here has been huge with us. I mean, we have a garden every summer, and we've been bringing food to the food pantry. It goes back and forth. The other thing that really, a lot of people say, Killingworth. What do you got a place in Killingworth for? I don't know if I'll be the breaker of bad news here, but Killingworth has a huge opiate problem. Huge. And the other thing I want to say is that I can't give names or anything. We've got 32 beds. We've got a girl's house and a guy's house in Killingworth that consists of 2/3 of those beds. And I want to say maybe 35, 40 people originally from Killingworth that have come through our houses. So,
that's why I invited you here tonight.
and we want to be quiet. We want to be quiet. We want to be good neighbors. I always say the neighbors that we have, I say to them, you don't have to worry about the ones in recovery. You got to worry about the ones that aren't in recovery, that are aimlessly walking down the street in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. I always found that crazy, And the other thing is the people from the other towns that are cruising into Killingworth, because there's really there's no police to stop them. Kids, adults, they're walking out of their houses, they're going down the street, they're getting what they got to get, they're going back home, they're overdosing, they're destroying their families, they're flunking out of school, they're bringing stuff into schools. That's another an avenue that we believe is huge. Education. There's got to be Killingworth is not that little tiny backwoods town anymore. Killingworth is right there with the rest of them as far as drug and alcohol abuse, and this is why we do this. Anything we can do. I'm 15 years sober myself.
Congratulations.
So she put up with me for a while with
So when can you two come back and give us a plan?
Okay, so the first step is, I need to talk to who are decision makers and some key stakeholders in that process. So that would be the first step. I can make myself available any Fridays if that, and any mornings.
Okay.
So if those people can either let me know who you are or contact me in some way, I don't know who you are, so I'm dependent on y'all reaching to me. And then we will start. I have a whole interview set of questions and notes we'll take, and then it doesn't take, it just takes the time I need to percolate and write it, and that maybe it'd be a week.
I think we could probably do a special meeting, set up some time with Hannah, and have this conversation.
I think that's a good idea. What I was gonna suggest is we should probably, as stakeholders, get somebody from Youth and Family Services, and also if, somebody from CRAD. We
Yeah.
should probably get, pardon me?
schools.
The schools, the Youth and Family Services, but you think somebody individually from the
schools
schools?
is separate.
Who from the schools would you
I
get?
can help with that.
Kathy
You.
Zandio, okay.
It won't be me, but.
But you'll
I'm
put
gonna
your
bring
name
it.
on it, and
Yeah.
you'll find us somebody.
No, I think this was a
I'll pass it
really
on to
good
Jen.
conversation, and this,
How about the state police rep? Would that
well,
make sense?
I can get a resident state trooper.
Yeah, they
involved.
might have stuff to offer as
We
well.
we know the resident state troopers.
I'm sure you do. Unfortunately, you're not. Yeah. All right, well, thank you guys. Thank you for coming tonight. I know you do a lot of good work. All right. I'm moving on. This is gonna be a very bad transition. We're gonna talk about trash hauling. This was requested by Selectman Young at our previous BoS, and we were talking about whether or not we register trash haulers here in town. I did talk to Clinton. They do not require private haulers to register. I also spoke to Haddam. There's a registration form attached. They do require them to register, but does not charge. Of the two haulers, Pete's registers routinely, always, never does. And if you look at the state statute that says that every private hauler is supposed to register. It is one of the most difficult things to manage. I can do some more research, but that's what I know for now.
Well, if the state requires us to do it, we should probably.
No, the state requires the haulers to register. It doesn't require us to make them register.
But we don't even have a place for them to register, so we can't, right now, they can't be compliant with the state law because we don't give them a tool to register through, is that
Well,
right?
even like
And
I
I don't,
said,
I mean, we just
like
kinda
I
learned
said,
about this.
Haddam has a tool for them to register, and one of them does and one of them doesn't. I don't know what's going to help us here. I mean, what's the end goal? Do you think that registering our trash haulers is, it's not gonna be a revenue source, thank you. It's not gonna be a revenue source for us that I'm aware of.
It's a small revenue source, but we had, somebody from the public came and had, I don't remember, it was a few, maybe a month or two ago, and gave a number of, incidents where people were driving quickly, knowing who's on the streets and moving quickly through our streets. I think it makes sense. So maybe we do a little bit more research and then come back and
Yeah.
talk about this,
Yeah,
to see what I don't have any expertise in this area, and we bring ours down to the dump with everybody else, so, but there are people, and they do drive pretty quickly down the road, so,
I think it's more just a matter of accountability, I just, somebody's gotta put their name, their company name, and we've got them on record as serving the town of Killingworth. I think it gives us a little bit more strength, should we have any problems with them.
Well, I do have that form that Haddam shared with me, and, it's in your packet. But they don't charge him for it, and when I talked to Bunny over at DPW, she said, there's probably more. And she's only aware of Pete's and Always, there may be more.
Do we register, pump out services?
No, not that I'm aware.
Yeah. I mean, it sort of strikes me as falling in sort of the same category.
Correct.
For the same reasons, a little bit different, but, and I don't wanna turn this into a big administrative undertaking, but I do think something like this would
But
probably
pump out
work.
services do submit, their forms,
They
every
have
time
to.
they collect from a house, they submit it to the town, because
Well,
Board of Selectmen,
sometimes.
or they're supposed to. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
supposed to, for the
sometimes.
Board of Selectmen, because we're serving as the Water Pollution Control Authority. So pump outs are supposed to be copied to the WPCA of the town.
Yeah.
So in that sense, they are notifying us if they're in the town, right?
Robin will say sometimes she gets reports and sometimes she doesn't. Other times the citizens will turn in their pump out report, sometimes not. And then I even talked to Crad about on the pump out, whether or not we should join, there's some sort of online service, but not every pumper does that work. So it becomes a bit of a challenge, chasing this. But, all right, went through that. We'll continue to move that. Through town event, we have Angel Ride coming on June 3rd. I move to permit Angel Ride's annual charity bicycle ride on June 3rd, 2023. Do I have a second?
Second.
We've already checked, there's no other issues with regards to the ride, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, Commission on Aging. So, Jamie, you have a motion here?
I do, thank you. So, at the last at the last public Board of Selectmen meeting, a group of folks came to the board with a letter, and we appreciate it, we listened. Lou and I met with a number of people in towns, and thank you for all the work that you've done. I think it makes a lot of sense, the statistics that they provided about the aging population that we have here in Killingworth, which we are, I think, all three part. It makes a lot of sense, and there's been history of groups in town dealing with seniors, but we don't have a commission on the aging. There's a lot of work that can be done. There's a lot of opportunity. We have things that are happening at Beechwood that's sort of for a subset of the aging in town, but not for all of our folks. We have a group of people that are excited and anxious and can do research and find grant money and do some work given the support of the town. So to do that, I'd like to make a motion, if I may. My draft motion as follows: to propose and create a new 5-member Town of Killingworth appointive board to be known as the Killingworth Commission on the Aging, effective February 14th, 2023. This appointive board or Commission on Aging is to be initially set up as a committee until such time as a town meeting establishes the ordinance for such continuing board pursuant to section 515 of the town charter. Membership to such Commission on Aging shall be established for 2-year terms, and pursuant to section 516 of the town charter, 3 members will initially serve 2 years and 2 members will initially serve 1 year. The municipal agent will serve as a non-voting ex officio member of the commission. The Board of Selectmen charges the Killingworth Commission on Aging with the following mission. The Commission on the Aging will study the conditions and needs among our senior residents and community, as such needs are related to housing, economics, employment, health, and recreational matters. It will review services provided and make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen, the municipal agent, and to our town. It will provide and sponsor programming. The commission has the authority to apply for available state, federal, and private grants to support its purpose. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
One thing I will say, we just received notification of potential $17,000 to be allocated to Killingworth. It's a grant for senior centers. Now, but wait, slow down. We don't have a senior center. Whether or not that $17,000, and I'm waiting to hear more, whether that $17,000 can be used to do the studies we need to understand what it would take to put more to follow. I just got this information this week, and I think it's important for us to follow this, but if we have a grant to do this work, that would be awesome. So, that was just my discussion point.
I think I'd also
Awesome.
make a point that a senior center doesn't have to be
A physical.
Right, a
physical.
It doesn't
Could
have to be a
Right.
fit, correct,
Right.
correct. So, that's where we're at, and that was just this week's news. All right,
So,
no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. If you need this for Elizabeth.
All right, moving on to old business, man, this is gonna be a long meeting, guys, sorry.
No, you're doing good, Nancy, just keep cooking.
Moving on. All right, we're on to, approval of the KVFC full list of full active members in good standing as of December 31st, 2022. Do I have I motion to approve the list that is now on letterhead and sign. Do I have a second? It's down in the bowels of the.
Here. No, I have it. Do we have a motion
We do.
and a second?
Did we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Discussion. I think what we have here in front of us is a list. But one of the things that was asked for in the last meeting, and why I suggested that we table it, is that there be the list of criteria provided as part of this that establishes the qualifying of whatever it is, 36 members here. What is it that we're qualifying?
Well, their qualifications are very different than it is for the ambulance association. It depends on their hours of service. So they're sending us this list saying that these members have met whatever those criteria are.
I know, and I'm asking for that to be listed. Is there a reason why we don't?
I wasn't asked for it. You guys should have it on record because it's part of the pension plan.
Can you list it for us? Just
6
simple.
meetings, 6 work details, 6 meetings, 6 work details, 6 drills. 20% of the previous year's fire calls is the number.
Can you just put it in writing for us? I think that suffices.
It's on file here.
It is
It's in
part,
this building. We filed it.
I don't know if it's part
Under
of the
your
pension plan.
signature is part of this, I think is what you're asking for, Lou, right? Just on the
Yeah.
signature.
I mean, otherwise, what are we certifying here?
Yeah, in one place.
Yeah,
The same with,
we can do whatever you want, I mean, but at least in the 17 years that I provided that list when I was senior trustee, we never gave the criteria over because it was always something that you guys were clearly aware of.
Correct.
except for now we have a pension plan,
Yeah.
there's a lot of money rolling, so it
No
just makes
problem.
sense
We
to
can
have
add
it all
that
in
to
one
the-
place,
I-
thank you.
Rick,
You
I've
got
been
it.
doing this for almost a dozen years now. I wish I could say I knew what that list was, but I don't. So,
Well, and even, I'll go back and say, and the ambulance association, I don't think we had, when they provided us their list, I don't think they provided us their criteria for the number of calls they made.
I thought they
I think we
did.
did.
I thought they did, and that's why we approved one and not the other.
I thought it was the letterhead. I'll go back and look at my
It
notes.
might have
No,
been.
I don't think it was the
Might have
letterhead,
been.
it
Back
was
to
a
me was the
signature.
letterhead and the signatures, that's
But
what I need.
With the criteria.
The criteria it was actually in the minutes, asking for that criteria.
All right, so we will table this again and get the criteria.
Is this affecting firefighters in any way by holding this up for another
It's
meeting?
more whether it affects the assessor.
Yeah,
It,
I don't think
it's
affects
more
her.
for Gina to get all of her paperwork done and the assessor to do what she needs to do.
But
for-
we could put it off for one meeting and get that list,
We could
correct?
do this for,
Thank you.
table to next time. Also tabling, the high-level tree summary. I know you wanted an update from Bruce. He's in Costa Rica this week. He will be here, available for a conversation with us at our next meeting.
Who's this again?
Bruce
Those tree
Fagan.
were
Oh,
the tree.
Bruce,
Yeah.
he's in Costa Rica?
Yes.
Checking out the trees.
Oh my
Zip lining to get the trees. All right, finally, for all of those people here for Eric, Eric Hour Park. So, we did get a residential email, you have it in your packets. The BoS requested Jim to provide an inventory of all the fields and user groups and the cost of maintaining the fields so we can view the details to make a better decision. I know we had this discussion about multi-purpose fields versus baseball fields, and Lou, you had some strong feelings about that as well. So, with that, I turn it over to Laura.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Purley. I'm a Killingworth resident. I have 2 kids, and part of the Haddam Killingworth Little League board. I'm the uniform coordinator. So, and we're really fortunate. We have a bunch of bunch of people here with us who are all part of the Little League board as well. Obviously, we have an interest in this. Personally, I first became aware of this the KRP grant because another mom on the bleachers during All-Stars came to me and said, "Hey, you're on the board, right? You know about what's going on. Give me some updates on this grant, on this new baseball field." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I've never heard of it." She sent me the article in the Patch. I read it and was exuberant. I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's this money for a baseball field? This is amazing." So I shared it with our board. We were all very excited to hear this news. And then, we talked a lot about it over several meetings. We wrote to Jim Duffield as in Parks and Rec to get a little bit more information and see how we may be able to contribute to the conversation and collaborate. As baseball and softball folks in town, we certainly wanted to participate in the conversation. Unfortunately, we heard back from Jim that actually the plans had changed completely and no longer included a baseball field. So baseball grant, a grant was written. A justification was made in town by some amazing people in the past. They did not include anybody on our current board, but there was a justification made for a full-size baseball diamond in the town of Killingworth. And my understanding is that at Sheldon, there used to be a full-size baseball diamond that was removed. And then other things were built there that we all use and appreciate and we're happy to have. But since then, a baseball field has not been put back in place. And that's what this grant was for. And that was the justification for this grant. Things have not changed. There's still no full-size baseball field. The need remains. The need has not changed. We still need a full-size baseball field in the town of Killingworth. I want to make sure that we say that the Little League, we love all sports. We don't have anything against a multi-purpose field. We love soccer. We love lacrosse. The same children who play baseball and softball also play lacrosse. How many of us have seen kids changing their lacrosse uniform into their baseball uniform to come and play the next game? Or they have a sibling who plays on those other teams. So this isn't some sort of competition about what sport is most important. We love all sports, and we're really grateful to have amazing facilities in our town. We're here to let you know that we're concerned about the idea that this grant was written, the funds were secured and intended for a baseball field, and now it's totally changed and baseball has not been included at all. So that's what we're here to talk about. And we have a lot of experts with us who are who in the area of softball and baseball. If anybody has any questions about those things, so that's our position.
I look back at the data and it looks like your numbers are up this year, so the kids are coming back to play.
We did combine with Haddam, so as many other sports in town are combined with Haddam, and our school systems are combined. So in 2020, we did combine with Haddam, so now we're Haddam Killingworth Little League. So we have excellent participation. Our registration numbers for this year are still rolling in. We just opened registration. It'll be open for a bit longer before we begin the season. But we do hope that we continue to grow. And one of the missions of Little League in our town is to, of course, grow the love of the lifelong love of baseball and softball. And I also wanted to mention, we work very closely with the Breakers organization, and we're really fortunate to have an AAU organization that's founded and based in our own town and that supports Little League. And the kids who play with Breakers and learn from Breakers and have access to that kind of high-level coaching tend to be the kids who stick with the program and play through middle school and high school and maybe even college if they're good enough. So
I do know, so this piece of information is what Jim dropped off to us. I know he's got his own meeting tonight. I think the key here is for us to impress upon Jim, if we want to stick with the baseball field based on the original grant request versus going to a multi-purpose field, do us as the first selectman have that, or the board of selectmen have the ability to do so?
I believe we do. And first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and feel free to jump in and fill in some gaps, but there's some history here that I would like to share. So I went back and I believe, and I don't know, Elizabeth, thank you very much for helping find this, but I believe the original approval for the Sheldon work was on December 3rd of 2012. And I remember at that meeting standing up and saying that I would support the disassembly of the existing Jack Ahern field. Jack Ahern was one of our infamous first selectmen many years ago. I knew Jack Ahern. With the condition that it would be rebuilt at the K-Rock field, which is now the Eric Auer field. And there were but there was actually an advanced design that was done for that field. At that time, Dan Colonia was the chairman of Park and Rec. And I believe I've got my hands on the drawings, but I don't have them today. I think they're coming to me tomorrow. So I would just make that point. The other thing that I would point out is that our current plan of conservation and development, which is the guiding tool for how our plan is developed, our town is developed. And I highlighted a section in here, but it says, additionally, the Eric W. Auer Recreational Park located on a 143-acre site on North Parker Hill offers 4 2 small, 2 large, irrigated, multi-purpose fields with an additional practice area suitable for soccer, lacrosse and football, multiple hiking trails, and a playground currently under construction. An area designated for future development into a full-size baseball field is also located on the site. That's explicit in our plan of conservation and development. And it was very much, I believe, the root of the last piece of this, which was the language that was proposed when this grant was put in. And I would encourage you to read it, but it very definitely talks about, however, the Sheldon Park project eliminated Killingworth's only regulation-sized baseball field back in 2004. When Clough Harbor Associates conducted a facilities needs assessment for the town, more than a third of 13 and 14-year-old boys and 12% of the 15 to 17-year-old boys participated, didn't even mention girls, participated in baseball teams using a full-size field. The loss of that field has left us unable to support Babe Ruth, American Legion, etc. Our over 40 baseball teams will participate ranging up to 70 years in age, must go to neighboring towns for practice and games, which is the same problem we have today.
Mm-hmm.
The next stage of our plan, therefore, is to build a new full-size field on the southern part of the property on Parker Hill. This second phase of the Killingworth Recreation Project, originally called the Weddish property after the owner of the property was purchased by the town, has been engineered and drawings were attached. That was part of the application for Sheldon, and it cited this project as being justification for doing that. And I think those are two pretty strong examples of why we need to follow the course here. Now, things do change. If there's a compelling reason for doing that, I would say, Nancy, if there's a compelling reason for doing that, we as a board have an obligation to go back to the town and say, well, we know we got this $500,000 for a baseball field, which meets our POCD. It was part of the description for the renovation of Sheldon, but we think things have changed. Or we can stay the course, but I don't think I know Park and Rec doesn't have the unilateral authority to do that, and I don't feel this board does either unless we stay the course.
So I understand, this is all good background information, and clearly we had the details here to go with the baseball field. I do know that Jim had come to us and said numbers have changed. I don't know what those numbers look like. I need him to weigh in on this too.
I would like to make one more point, and it's echoing to some degree Lauren's point. This isn't about soccer or baseball. This is about soccer and baseball. And again, if you go into the POCD, it lists and talks about in the recreational section about balance between these active and passive recreational venues, and that there needs to be attention given to all of these. And so, again, I would say that it would be, from where I sit, it would be unreasonable to have taken something away, used it as justification to do so, and then not recreate it, which was part of that plan.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, don't get me wrong. I just wanna understand why Jim feels this way. That's it, he wasn't here.
He was pretty clear at the last time when he came into his presentation that he had a group of folks in town that were pressuring him into the needs of providing services for lacrosse for the recreational fields, and that the baseball folks weren't prevalent, and it sounds like that's because you didn't know about it. So it seems like he was basing his information on a subset of the population, and thank you for all the work you did, Lou, in getting all that history. It seems to me that if our plan of conservation and development says we've set the land apart, we said we were gonna use the property and give them a field. So there's history there when we built something else, and then we wrote the grant and got a $500,000 grant to build a baseball field. then it almost feels like it's just kind of arbitrary decision to change it to something else. It just doesn't feel like, even, based on one person's, and I realize he's done a lot of work here.
He does yeoman's work, yes.
Yeah, he really does. He does excellent work, but it sounds like the baseball folks weren't even at the table. And it does feel like, and let me preface this by saying I have 3 boys in town who play soccer. And they don't play baseball, and it may be because it just wasn't, available or on my radar. And so even though my kids use the fields, it seems to me that baseball makes more sense for all the reasons that have been described here.
My intentions were to call attention to this. My guess is that Jim is simply not aware
Well,
of
and
this
unfortunately, he's not
background.
here right
Right.
now.
Yeah.
So that's my problem. I don't wanna cut him down by the knees. I want him.
That's not my intentions either.
Yeah,
It's
so
just to make sure that we map through a strategic plan that was
Correct.
put in place, that literally mapped from our plan of conservation and development through the development of these
Right.
recreational fields, and there was a clear commitment to one particular component of it, and it's been funded for that purpose, and that's.
not clearly documented.
Right.
But what we do need is to have Jim come back at our next meeting and we need to talk to him at some point. Our next meeting, tonight is a Park and Rec meeting, so our next meeting is on the 27th. And we'll invite Jim back and we'll have this discussion, at least bring this to light.
Is there any deadlines that we have with respect to this grant? We haven't changed anything with the grant, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
And who's representing us with the grant, with the folks that gave us the grant?
So, well, it's Jim and whoever's there, who does he have to us?
Who's communicating with, is it deep money? I can't remember.
I think it's deep.
Deep money, so who's the liaison between the town and deep on this grant? Is
I
it
do
Gina
not know,
or you?
I don't know.
But nothing's changed at this point.
I have not, so here's what's happened,
You or me.
that's it. Jim has given me the paperwork to approve for this, whatever work that they're trying to do. I have not signed it yet because I'm waiting to get all of the feedback before I sign off on approval.
On approval of what?
Because remember, we had a resolution a couple of sessions ago where I am the signatory on all of this stuff for the grants. That's not atypical. At this point.
But with our approval,
Well,
with
right.
our approval,
So-
not, yeah.
So Jim sent me that paperwork, and he said, okay, here, are you ready to sign? I said, I'm not ready to sign until I understand the course that we're taking, because that signature means that the project plan he submitted for a multi-purpose field would need to change before it could sign off on it.
So there is a project plan for the multipurpose field that's already been, there's like a budget already, because we did, when we attended the most recent Parks and Rec meeting, where we brought up our concerns, extensively, and had a lot of questions, about the budget and the plans, they didn't provide those plans or that budget back to us, so that's just something to be aware of. To be aware of too. I mean, because we're curious about like what happened. How did this happen? Because the articles in the Patch and in the Examiner are really recent. So it seems like there was like a quick something happened really pretty quickly over the summer that we weren't privy to. I'm sure that was not on purpose, but regardless, now we want to be a part of the conversation.
The news is I have not signed
Okay.
the project plan that was put forth. And again, it's procedural. So when I sign this with this project plan, it means that they're gonna start releasing funds to us. But if we don't have a plan that that meets the needs of what we laid out to do, that's why I haven't signed it yet.
The thing I'm troubled about is that I've never seen these plans. I did see these plans, and in this narrative, it talks about the plans for the baseball field were submitted as part of this. Now, this was the Sheldon grant, not the money we're talking about now.
No, this was Sheldon, okay.
But my point is that when we went back to DEEP to get funding for this field, it was in reference to that specific set of
Sheldon grant?
plans. And if those plans don't come back and go through the proper organizations, not the least of which is planning and zoning, inland wetlands, and I believe the Board of Selectmen, we've got the cart way in front of the horse here.
Well, I'll forward you that piece of that document that he sent to me, but we haven't signed it yet. Here's the deal, it's not been signed. So we need to just sit down with Jim, make sure we're all on the same page.
I wanna be clear that you don't feel how do I wanna word this? I wanna be clear that the decision to approve signing that comes back to the Board of Selectmen. Is that your understanding?
The resolution was that I would sign everything from a financial standpoint
Right.
to allocate those funds. Part of that was me signing that as, here's the project plan we've submitted to start that work.
But at the time that was granted to you, at least this selectman was under the impression it was a set of plans I'd already seen for a baseball field.
I'll
So
forward
do we need to
you.
make a motion to hold any submission?
Well, at this point, I haven't done anything. Let me forward you what was sent to me for approval.
All
And
right.
let's know that I'm not doing any, I'm not signing this document. I'll forward it to you. Let's not complicate this.
Yep.
And at the same time, we'll bring Jim back in at our next meeting, cause he did have this meeting tonight.
Mhm.
And let's make sure he knows all this background as well.
Can we get the plans that accompanied this, the original Sheldon plans? The plans that accompanied the Sheldon, do we have those, or?
I don't know where they would have been part of an official town. I'm looking to you, Elizabeth, but
No, I don't know what you have in front of you. This is the steep grant for the KRP.
Yes, but on here it refers to,
What do
has
you-
been
what-
engineered, drawings are attached. It refers to the drawings for the baseball field being attached to this. So it must have been some kind of a submission. I don't know that it necessarily falls to you.
No, we can find them.
It's just cause I happened to know who the engineer was at the time, did reach out to the engineer, I haven't heard back, but if I can get the
We
drawings
would
that way.
definitely have them.
All right.
Yeah. we would have
Well,
them.
that to me is, I think, what we've gotta go back to. If we
But
can
there's
find them.
two sets of plans. There's the plans for the Sheldon plan and the plan for KRP Phase 2. Two different
Yes,
things.
Which was the baseball
Two
It's,
different
that's
things,
the one
yeah.
we're looking for, is the baseball field for phase 2.
Yeah, okay.
Which-
Yeah, we
which is what
definitely
this-
have that.
Which is what this refers to.
Okay.
All right.
For that next meeting, are we able to get what was submitted to you to,
Yeah,
Look at-
I can send that out,
okay?
so that you have it.
I'd
Can
like
that
to
be
say,
it?
it is important to get some baseball representation at that meeting because the Park and Rec Board has none. And I think that's part of the reason that the plans were submitted to you. I've attended some of those meetings. I've asked to be included on all the correspondence, so I knew where the meetings were. At times, there were Zoom meetings. It was like pulling teeth to try to get that information so I could attend. I did attend some meetings. I told them about the need for baseball. They kind of opened their eyes a little bit and said, oh, maybe there is a need for baseball. Well, the problem is, there's not enough money. I was told that there's not enough money with this grant to build a baseball field. I said, well, can we look at the bids? Can we see who bid on this job that is so outrageous that this money can't cover the cost? What are the gaps? Can we raise money? What can we do? And, it was just it felt very clear to me that they didn't want me there. And that's,
I'm struggling with how there's a set of plans that went out to bid.
Right.
Because
Did they go out to bid?
I asked the question. They're telling me that the money that we receive for this grant will not cover the cost of the baseball field, which is why it's not gonna happen.
They also said that to me. They just carte blanche said there's $500,000 will not cover the cost of a baseball field. And in the moment, I didn't think to ask, how do you know that?
Wow.
I didn't think to ask. It just didn't occur to me until after the fact. But exactly like what Ed is saying, it would be nice to have some evidence to support that. And if so, like, what's the what does it cost? And if it's more than $500,000, I'm sure we can work, as a group to try to fundraise.
I do honestly think that this is all well intended. I just think that there is some leadership in Park and Rec that is not familiar with perhaps the history, or more importantly, the process. And the process requires certain levels of approval that tie back to plan of conservation and development, the grant application, and it ultimately needs to get reviewed here and at planning and zoning, and maybe some other areas before it takes that big step. That was all done with the ball field. And that's why the change is so alarming to me, because we could potentially be going forward with an investment of the town, forget what it is, that the town hasn't been properly informed of. And that to me is the issue of why we can't just approve this here. If it's the baseball field, we can, because we've gone past those milestones. If it's a change, I feel as a selectman, this has to go back to the town and be revisited. So, anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. I'm gonna hang on, I'm gonna get back on it one more time. I just wanna say, I will. Well, Coach Anino is here, yes, Coach Anino is here. Way back when my boys, and by the way, they played soccer, as did I, so it's not a soccer baseball thing.
Lewis played baseball.
He did. He played soccer too, not as well as he played baseball, but, and that was one of the phone calls, by the way, before. But what I wanted to say, and Coach, you may remember this, but way back, it's gotta go back maybe 15 years now, maybe longer, I'm getting older than I think. There was a year, right around the time that Pete Rinkowski and my son started coming into baseball. I think it was the year prior to Pete, and I think there was only one kid from Killingworth, one kid that made the varsity baseball team that year. And part of the reason was we didn't have the infrastructure in place to develop these kids to play. And so I remember Lee Rinkowski and I were neighbors at the time, and we made it our business to make sure that the kids in town got to play. And we coached them at little old Irene Sheldon Field over there. And sadly, when they got older, we had to do what these folks are doing now. We were taking our kids out of town and coaching our kids in other towns so that they would be prepared to play at the high school level. And that's one of the reasons why this is so important to me. Again,
probably one of the I think it was one of the Reardons was the only connection.
That's who it was. You're exactly right. Yep.
Out of 16 varsity baseball players, we had
one kid from Killingworth.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then here's the sad part is we at that point I don't think we had any cuts.
Yeah.
Mind you, Corey ended up playing professionally for a very long time. But and his brother had a very successful college career as well. But yeah, they were the only ones that made it through to varsity baseball.
Yep.
So
Without cuts.
one of the questions that was raised was about how they can get information. So if we bring Jim back to the next meeting, in our meeting materials that we would put up on our, on the town website for the meeting, for the Monday night meetings, we put our materials up.
Only if it's a
Only
full,
when they're remote, yeah.
only when it's a full remote, but we can certainly have packets here available for people for that reason. So all of this information, for example, we can have there, as well as that application, that Jim asked me to sign, so we have something that's cohesive there.
Okay.
Well, let me add something.
Please.
I was involved with Little League Baseball 15, 18 years ago myself, and I used to go to the Park and Rec Committee meetings. Same deal, nothing changes. They didn't wanna see me there, they didn't wanna see us there. There's something about it, it's historical in town for some reason.
Well, it's passionate, especially for
Yeah.
parents in that moment, it's very passionate for you. But at the same time, the town is looking at what are the long-term needs, and
But it's equity. What you do for some, you should do for all, right? It should be available for all students who wanna play any sport.
Correct. Well, and I like the idea you guys offered to, if it's a financial, if we know what the dollars are, and there's a gap, then we can figure out a way to fill it. We have ARPA money. You know, we were talking about, you know, using it in different ways, we have that to supplement as well. Not that we would use all of it, but there's a chance for it.
The
It's a
challenge, we're
possibility.
gonna have to get it
We
used by
spent it-
2026.
Yeah.
Just saying, Sarah?
When do
was
you have
several
your
years ago.
packets ready by?
So
Because
you know
I'm
it's
thinking
gonna-
that these
you
folks
know
are
it's gonna
asking
be
to have
more
it in
fuel
advance of the
involved.
meeting, just
Well,
so that
we
they can look at it.
typically
I don't know if
have
it's
our
enough.
packets ready on Thursday. The Thursday before the meeting. So we could, so Lauren, I could reach out to you and say, packets are available, we'll have some sitting outside or in the clerk's area for you to pick up.
So that's a meeting that we should plan to attend as well?
27th,
Okay, got it.
2
Got
weeks
it.
from tonight.
Put it on
Assuming
my
that
calendar.
I can get, assuming I can get Jim here, because he
Okay.
does travel for work.
Sure.
So, let me confirm that, but I'll be in touch. Are you the spokesperson?
I mean, sure.
No, you are.
I'm really the uniform coordinator, but I'll do this too.
I wanna make one more technical point while we've got some baseball folks here. There was an argument made about the junior high school field being an appropriate field, and I think those that know baseball, that junior high school field, the backstop, 10 feet, 15 feet behind home plate is not appropriate for baseball to be played at the level that these kids need to play at.
It would be from age 15 up, you need a bigger space, not to mention that field was shoddily put in from the jump. It's not it's not graded properly, you lose a dozen baseballs a game in that gully, that's right behind the field, and at $6 a game ball or $5 a game ball, it's more cost. And the other thing is, and again, I'm from Haddam, but I'm on the Haddam Killingworth board for Little League. Killingworth has an extremely rich history of baseball and producing really good players. Okay, you have a Hall of Famer that was from this town, and everybody pretty much knows that. But you also have a lot of players that also played very high level college and continued to play professionally after college. And it's, I don't know, for me, it's kind of sad to see that, like, you don't even have, there's not a full size, ball field anymore since the one at Sheldon got put away. It's just, for me, it's a head scratcher, and I just, I'm all baseball all the time, so I'm not gonna try to pretend like I'm anything else. But I just wanna say, I was talking to Corey Reardon the other day, and he's actually in the Toronto Blue Jays organization right now as a pitching coach. And he's like, "You're kidding me." And I'm like, "I swear, man." And so I have to give him an update when I get done with this. He's down in Florida in spring training right now. So there's people that really care that were here in the past, and they really do care about this.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time and making time for us.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
Thanks for coming.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right.
We'll be at that next meeting.
And yes, it's always this crowded.
Yeah.
So get in early. All right, I'm gonna move on to the ARPA policy update. So we presented an update of the ARPA policy at.
I need a beer.
Did I have that? It's here. At our last meeting, and, I don't think you had time, Lou and Jamie, to review it. But we did make some changes to this to remove the Economic Recovery Committee, and updated it as such. And then we also updated the form so that we have the level of accountability that we were looking to have as we use these ARPA funds. How do we wanna proceed with this?
I've given this a lot of thought, since the last meeting. I don't know that we need the concern over the level of accountability, and don't misunderstand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that our capital planning process and our process within town for administering capital funding, which we have included the ARPA funds in that process. that system is entirely intact. And so I'm suggesting that we adopt a policy that essentially drives that activity into that arena. I actually prepared a draft motion that I would like to read, and I think it might help us move this thing along if that's acceptable.
See what you got?
Here's a copy. And the basis was from the documents. Did I give you all mine?
Yes, you did.
I thought I had one for Elizabeth there too. There we go.
I got him.
So, let's start by a little bit of background. In March of 2022, Killingworth formally elected the flat standard allowance option, which allows all non-entitlement units or NEUs to spend ARPA funds for general governmental services, accepting debt service and pension payments, which Gina spoke about earlier tonight. Further, both the U.S. Treasury Department and OPM have encouraged municipalities to follow their normal processes for authorizing projects and making expenditures. That's the background. So from there, I therefore move that effective, and I said 2/13, which is today, but I'd like to modify it to say 2/14, 2023, the town of Killingworth, by action of the Board of Selectmen, establishes the following practice for approval, distribution, and reporting of American Rescue Act ARPA funds. The Board of Selectmen shall consider uses for such funding consistent with its current capital and operating budget practices. This shall include input from various town operating departments and organizations, as well as input from the community. Recommendations made to the Board of Selectmen shall include a written narrative and detailed rationale for approval. This rationale shall be based on the eligible ARPA uses and key objectives or other criteria used for the recommendation. Those needs meeting the criteria of ARPA shall be evaluated by the Board of Selectmen for approval based on a priority assessment of overall town needs while considering the town's economic, social, facility/infrastructure, and health needs. Also, while we are not bound to the designated uses of ARPA funds, the Board of Selectmen may consider the overall spirit of the act and consider projects that fall outside of general government services subject to the following, and this is straight from the guidance. Eligible uses responding to the public health emergency and negative economic impacts of COVID-19, replacement of lost revenue, premium pay, water and sewer infrastructure, and broadband infrastructure. The Treasury's key objectives: fight the pandemic and support families and businesses struggling with its public health and economic impacts, maintain vital public services even amid declines in revenue resulting from the crisis, build strong, resilient, and equitable recovery by making investments in long-term opportunities and support general government services. Recommendations of the approved spending of ARPA funding shall be submitted by the Board of Selectmen to the Board of Finance, consistent with and at the same time as the annual budgeting process. ARPA funds will be reflected in such submissions as funding source within the budget, and spending will be accounted and tracked against the same partitioned funding source by the town's finance director. The Board of Finance presents the final recommendations at a town meeting as part of the overall annual budget submission. As with all budgeted items, the town will consider ARPA projects as part of the town budget approval. Following approval at a town meeting, the finance director shall, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen and the town treasurer, disperse funds. The submission of appropriate supporting invoices and/or other documentation ensuring that funds are used in the intended manner will be required by receiving organization by the receiving organization prior to fund distribution. These records are required to meet federal audit criteria. In addition to the above, the following shall be required. Town bidding regulations will be followed as warranted. The finance director shall provide to the Board of Selectmen and Boards of Selectmen and Finance a monthly report of fund balance, approved projects, encumbered funds, transfers, and interest earned. This can be part of an overall monthly budget report of the town's spending. Finance director shall disclose this information as part of the town's annual report. Finance director shall make the required annual reporting to the U.S. Treasury of the disbursements of these funds. That's my motion.
I'll second it.
I just received this for discussion.
Yeah.
I just received this. I'm not ready to move on this until I have an opportunity to sit down with Gino and make sure we understand this process. That's where I'm at. So I would respectfully request that we table this until our next meeting.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Okay. Very nicely done.
Thanks. Nancy, I apologize if what I was trying to do here was try and simplify this and just put in a motion. Basically, we are going to follow our normal budgeting process.
And that's fine. I just wanna make sure that I have a process to work through with Gino.
Yep.
That's in line with this.
Yep.
And just, yeah, that's it.
That worked.
All right, so next then, we still have this KAA request. We've already paid for their stretcher, but now we have automatic chest compression, updated defibrillators, and replace AEDs around town. Now, this doesn't come into our normal budget cycle. The Ambulance Association does not formally request this. Okay. Hi. How about the 27th? What are you doing?
2 weeks.
Yeah. 2 weeks.
I think I'd make it.
Okay.
I'm concerned we're gonna lose the grant because we've been talking about this for a lot of months.
And I will forward the grant information to my fellow selectmen. So, 2 weeks.
Okay, no questions now. I have,
No questions. We've moved on, so no questions now.
okay. Okay, if you have questions or send them to me beforehand.
We will.
Yeah, I would suggest in the spirit of everybody's time, because we had a really lengthy discussion, I'd be happy to talk with you or Nancy to kind of explain the gist of what we agreed to do here tonight. But we haven't agreed to do anything yet. We need to do some more discussion with you in terms of what's the appropriate course of action.
Correct.
Okay,
That's why we need the follow-on meeting.
okay, when can we talk then?
Well, I'm planning on having you here at the 27th, but perhaps we can have a brief discussion in advance so that he's got the background.
Yeah.
I would, if you're comfortable doing that,
Okay.
that way it's not a formal meeting, but I think you can convey the
Exactly.
the
I get so many phone
information.
calls saying, call me, and I call them up and say, hey, I need you to check into this. And I say, if you left me that on the voicemail, I would have checked into it and gotten the answer back, instead of having you make this call to go back and look at it.
I'll give you a call.
Perfect, efficient use of time.
There's some information that came out tonight that I would ask that you.
I'll
send
share
along
the
to them as well.
information with you, so.
Yeah, I have more information that's not there too, that's,
Okay,
I think, very pertinent.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Jim.
So we have these 3 other items that don't typically show up from the Ambulance Association on our budget. So to your point in your new policy, there may be other things that fall through the cracks and we just have to figure out how we push these forward.
I would like to suggest that be included as part of our review of capital requests as part of the overall capital budget, and those get included with any of the other requests that come in for funding, whether it's town capital or whether it's ARPA funds.
Yep.
And I would prefer that they're not approved as a one-off, that we have context of the overall budget before we
So
move on those.
We'll get this included in, as we go into our budget presentations, we'll get this done. Custodial bid, next steps, where are we?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if Gina's around. But I went through and I read through the RFP, or the response, and it's you know, it's fairly straightforward.
It's very comprehensive.
It's you know, we have one bid. I think that we probably should have a follow-on meeting, because there's some pieces in here that I would like to make sure whoever we bring in is gonna be following those requirements. There was a structured cleaning program, there was a requirement for a QA program, there's a requirement for a schedule, so you know, we know where and when. So I would like to suggest that we call this single bidder in and go through that. There's a little bit of urgency, although our current custodial services has agreed to stay on mercifully to continue cleaning.
There is an urgency.
But he's asked to step away, and you know.
Yeah.
He you know, I tried to encourage him to bid, but the truth is, he was just kind of carrying this along, I think, because it was his mom's business, but he's actually working full-time somewhere else, so we do need to move this along.
We do. We need somebody, you know, he's not, his heart isn't into it, and we need.
That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, his heart's not into it. As much as he appreciates the business, his heart's not into it right now, and, all right, so we'll work through that.
Yeah, and if we can set up a time that I can be here to help walk through that, that would be most helpful.
And we talked about a 1-year renewable contract, which would eliminate a lot of risk. It's, you know, we need.
Yeah, it should be, 3 years, but renewable annually, or 1 year,
1 year
renewable up to 3
5,
years,
yeah.
or 5, even better.
3 or 5.
The highest you can go.
Well, it's not like an audit, you know.
Yeah, right.
Well, but if we're not happy, we could.
Yeah, no.
In a year, yeah.
As long as somebody would suck the bugs out of these lights, we'd be happy. I know that sounds insignificant, but sometimes you look up and you.
It's rusticy.
Clean the windows.
I know. So, the PFAS update, and there's a couple of things, there's a lot going on. So I've been working with the Connecticut Water Company, DEP, and DPH to prepare the slides for the town hall on February 22nd. The slides are in your packet for review. They do need to be updated based on the updates to the content we made in our testimony for SB 100. So I'm prepared to do that.
What does that mean?
There's some,
Remove some of the language.
yeah, so
Okay.
so some of the language, for all of you who, there is, at the state legislature now, SB 100 is a bill that's being proposed, an act establishing an account in the general fund to provide grants to towns that need PFAS testing and remediation. So, as a board of selectmen, together with town council, we have submitted, we prepared written testimony. After we sign this tonight, I'm going to upload this. The written testimony is, the public hearing is scheduled for Wednesday. So it's important that we work cooperatively to get this done. So that was part of that. Some of that content that's in that testimony is here, and I need to temper that as I move forward. But please know that these slides were reviewed by the Connecticut Water Company, by DEP, by DPH. They also gave me tutelage, if you will, onto what to say. And they tempered some of this. I will also say that work has begun with GZA to begin the design of a filtration system for both KES and Town Hall campus. I would say that I've never been in the bowels of KES, but I was down there the other day looking at the boilers.
Did we approve the design of this system?
They're trying to give us a proposal, and then.
Okay, so it's a proposal.
It's a proposal.
Not they're doing the design.
No,
Okay.
but they're giving us their feedback.
How do we do that without the, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Without it not being Board of Ed? Is that where you're going?
No, I just wanna make sure that My sensitivity to this is that this PFAS issue, while it's unquestionably affecting our town, it is an issue that is much bigger than the town of Killingworth. And I'm very sensitive to Killingworth being put in a position to have to assume the financial burden for remediation. It's not that I don't wanna absolutely be sure that we take care of our taxpayers and our residents in town, but it just seems to me very, very unfair that DEP is sort of giving us, half of the solution here, and they're attempting to say, here you go. And that's certainly what this outreach to the state is all about. It's about putting them on notice that the town of Killingworth is seeking funding for testing and remediation, and we added the language to include other towns, because the point is, it's not just us. There's at least two towns that preceded us, that, by the way, their needs were taken care of. We're on the tail end, and we're getting whatever was left, and we're getting left holding the check. And I wanna be sure that we, this board, the town, sounds off loud and clear that, we need your help, but more importantly, state of Connecticut, maybe federal government, this PFAS issue is not something that's unique to the town of Killingworth because we did a little test or drilling around the fire department here. It's something that's
ubiquitous.
Yeah, and so
It's gonna be different, so if you were to test 6 miles from here, you may get a PFAS hit, but it's very different than the PFAS hits that you're getting here. We don't know what this all looks like.
I think that the fact is, because we had a public well, that's what flushed this out. But there's a lot of towns out there in the state of Connecticut that are just like Killingworth and did just the same things, and I'll bet you, and I don't think anybody would be crazy enough to do this, but I'll bet you if you went to those areas and said, hey, let's do some testing here, they'd be right there with us. And that's my point. My point is, don't leave us out there like it's our problem.
But there's 2 separate state revolving fund applications in. One is for KES and one is for town campus. So we have 2 separate funding requests to get the state revolving fund monies.
Those are existing requests. This is above and beyond
This is
that.
above and beyond.
And to me,
especially any cleanup.
To me, what this sounds the alarm to is the magnitude of this issue.
Yep.
And I think that the state representatives are not as attuned to this as they need to be, because it's not affecting their constituents yet.
Well, I will say Senator Cohen co-sponsored this SB 100.
She did.
She did, and honestly, even Rivercog came to me and said, do you want us to testify? I said, yes, we have a challenge here in Killingworth, and we have to figure this one out. So that's what this was all about, was putting our voice on what has to happen. I will say, we'll get a proposal back from GZA on what all of this is going to cost. Whether we have to bid out, once we bid out that work, that's the next steps. But I'm still waiting for DEP and DPH to say, oh yeah, we've approved your request. I submitted that request in March of last year.
You're talking about the drinking water fund?
Yes, March of last year.
Do they have to approve it before it goes to Treasury for their?
Yes, and they said we can start doing this work in advance, but there's a risk. What if suddenly we fall below the line? And by below the line, they only have so many monies. Currently, we're above the line, but if something else rises to the top, guess who gets pushed down? So.
Again, that's the point of this.
Correct.
Is to make sure that we're on record as saying, this is something that we need your specific help on, and oh, by the way, you need to recognize that this is a statewide concern.
Yeah.
One thing, just going forward, that we should be, I'm sure we're doing it somehow, but maybe not in organized fashion yet, but every expenditure, everything that we do that costs money to the town related to PFAS, we should code it somehow, so that if we end up in a lawsuit down the road, when they find where the source is, if it becomes a class action suit, to hopefully refund some of this money that could have been used for other, things, that we can just grab it. So I don't know if there's a way to asterisk every expenditure, so even
That's
travel for you to meetings on, you know, if you're going to meetings with Rivercog on this issue, or, you know, all of that should be calculated, and just, it's gonna save a lot of work later on if we do it as we go now.
Yep, and I'll speak with Gina about that. I think that's pretty straightforward. I will say, I also met with Sunny,
Yeah,
Yeah.
good luck.
Lot and Tom Barger from the Regional Water Authority. And they're willing to provide consulting and testing services to the town. So I'm gonna have to go out to RFP for testing services. I'm gonna have to go out to RFP for a number of different things. They said that they can help us with the RFPs as well as, they may even respond to those. I'm also meeting this week with Rose Gavrilorak from the Connecticut Water Company to discuss potential long-term water solutions. So Connecticut Water Company has reached out to us for any city water, and we've already talked about this.
Those are all for fee services that they're offering.
Oh, of
correct?
course, everybody wants, you know,
Yeah,
can I
okay.
have some of your money? Yeah.
And again, I wanna be sure that we don't commit the town of Killingworth to
Correct.
anything until we get our state legislators involved here.
What did I say to Elizabeth? They want money.
Yeah, yeah, money we don't have.
Anyways, wow, selectmen's comments.
Let me get up on my soapbox again. I don't have any, thank you.
I have done.
Okay, so I'll just say, we did meet earlier today about IAM GIS software. We're gonna look into that. I think that may be an important tool moving forward for us. We'll have to wait and see. And really quickly, employee manual. I'm finalizing the edits after I got them all back from the labor attorney. An updated version will be available for your review shortly. And lastly, I'm working on a code of ethics as well, which is important for charter revision. Right now, I've downloaded the Clinton Code of Ethics, and I'm doing my best to make it ours. But it will require us to establish an ethics committee. So, just a heads up, guys. One more committee.
You got more work to do, Joan.
All right. It's 8:59. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.